From potential UFOs to the world's first personal computer. Stay tuned to number 1 to find out the strangest things found under the surface of our planet's seas and oceans. Number 10. Baltic Sea Anomaly. Wow, Baltic Sea Anomaly? This sounds just like a 1950s sci-fi movie with strange creatures and aliens. But it's not. In fact, this is the name given to a mysterious disk laying on the seabed. It was discovered in 2011 by a diving team from Sweden, and the explorers claim that when they first saw this strange object, it immediately reminded them of Han Solo's ship, the Millennium Falcon. It had practically the same shape like a flattened UFO saucer. Once the news of this discovery hit the media, UFO experts and conspiracy theorists had a field day. Most of them claiming that finally there is solid evidence that aliens exist. On the other hand, there were other people, such as military experts, who claimed that the find was actually part of an old 1940s-style anti-submarine mine. And finally, on the side of UFO deniers, were the scientists who dispelled all this with one simple claim. The object was actually a glacial deposit. Nothing more, nothing less. Although the debate still remains, two things are certain. One, if the object is indeed a glacial deposit, it definitely looks strange. And two, why aren't there any more of these deposits to be found to prove this theory? At least, that's what the conspiracy theorists keep asking. Number 9. The Ghost Fleet. Again, another potential title of a B-movie, but it's not. Ghost Fleet is actually something straight from the history book. Here's the deal. During the final years of World War II, the balance of the superpowers changed completely. The Americans had supremacy in the air, and the US bombers were flying across the Pacific Ocean, dropping bombs on Japanese imperial ships, bent on annihilating them completely. What's interesting is that most of the Japanese ships were actually located in one place, Truk Lagoon, a place in the Caroline Islands. The Allied forces decided to strike the final blow to the Japanese Navy, and a massive military campaign began. In a 2-day operation, Japan lost around 50 ships, and since there wasn't enough time for the Allies to clean up the mess, the material that was sunk in the action went down to the bottom of the ocean. Some 20 years later, explorers came to the place to look for the remains of the Truk Lagoon arsenal, and they found so many interesting things down there. Tanks, airplanes, ships, and more. What's amazing is that everything's practically intact and very good condition. But what's really spooky is the fact that the bodies of many of the Japanese soldiers are still around. Number 8. Lake Michigan's Stonehenge. Before we check out this amazing Stonehenge, we'd definitely appreciate it if you'd like this video and subscribe to Zero to Hero. And you'll want to click that little notification bell so you'll always be informed of new content. Wait, there's a Stonehenge-like structure in Lake Michigan? Well, yes, apparently. And if it sounds creepy to you, it sure is. But how did it get there? And what is it? Here's the story. Some time ago, divers were swimming deep in the waters of Lake Michigan when they found a strange-looking structure. Stones positioned in circular patterns, resembling those of the actual Stonehenge in England. But the Stonehenge in England was built 10,000 years ago. Is it possible that the American counterpart is also that old? It remains unclear to this day. The problem with the strange site deep in Lake Michigan is that opposed to its English cousin, it's in pretty bad shape because the stones have degraded significantly. And no one has the faintest idea how the construction came about, especially being underwater. Scientists are having a hard time researching because the water prevents them from spending enough time to do it. On the other hand, there are those who believe that, at a time when the circle structure was built, Lake Michigan wasn't a lake at all, but rather a valley, and it was completely dry. The water started collecting there much later. Okay, this theory definitely makes sense, no doubt about it. But here's the main question. How come the American and British Stonehenges are so alike? Were they made by the same people? Number 7. Bimini Road. This unusual road is located in the Bahamas, and it's become one of the most popular tourist attractions there. Basically, it's an underground path, and it's not located very deep. In fact, it's only 6 meters below water. If you want to see it, you can, because it's right there in the shallows. The Bimini Road was discovered in the 1960s, and it's one of the greatest mysteries of its kind. It has been featured in many magazines dealing with the unexplained and the mysterious. To this day, there are people who believe that the Bimini Road is part of the ancient city of Atlantis, and it's an actual walkway of the famous mythical city that was apparently located in the region of the Bahamas. If you look closely, you'll be able to see rocks. Big rocks placed one right next to the other, forming a large-sized path. The rocks are flat and amazingly cut at right angles, making them look like man-made pieces. And the road itself is a half a mile long. The Bimini Road was discovered in 1968 by Joseph Mason Valentine, who was a subsea archaeologist. After the discovery, thousands of people have been coming here to admire the beautiful pathway and conjure up stories and theories about how it came about. Unfortunately, none of these stories surrounding the Bimini Road are true, because thanks to carbon dating and other research, it has been proven that this phenomenon came about through natural processes, mainly by erosion. Nevertheless, the legends remain. Number 6. Train Graveyard. What is the train graveyard, you ask? It is a place off the coast of New Jersey where 2 old locomotives reside. The machines date back to the 1850s and were discovered accidentally by a man named Paul Hepler in 1985. But this is not the strangest thing about this unusual find. Actually, what's unbelievable is that no one knows for sure what the locomotives are doing down there or how they got there. In 1985, Paul Hepler was mapping the ocean's floor with an instrument called a magnetometer, which is used to measure the magnetic field of certain locations. When the magnetometer was above one place near the ocean's floor, it picked up strange impulses, signaling that some metal objects were right beneath. The water was quite muddy and the visibility was poor, so Paul couldn't see much at first. But after a while, he was able to clearly distinguish the locomotives in front of him. What makes the whole story strange and spooky is that no one knows when the locomotives were built. There's no records of ever building them, let alone sinking them. And if there were some records, they have likely been destroyed over the years. It's like something directly from the Twilight Zone. Number 5. Nameless Ship. A couple of years ago, a wreckage of a ship was found in the Gulf of Mexico. The ship was not just another ordinary wreckage because it had a lot to offer its underwater visitors. In the ship, there were boxes full of musket-style rifles, ceramic plates, and many glass bottles. And these are just some of the artifacts that were found on the location. So it's clear that the ship belonged to someone quite rich, because its cargo showed nothing but splendor. For the time, it was an extremely rich haul, no doubt about it. In 2011, sonar picked up something on the seafloor, and this was the first time the mysterious ship showed itself to explorers. 1 year later, there was another expedition, determined to find the ship, and it was a success. The wooden hull of the ship was almost completely destroyed because it dissolved in the seawater over time, but luckily it had a copper shell, which was practically intact. It's still unclear to whom the ship belonged. According to scientists, it could have been a pirate vessel or a passenger ship. Who knows? And what amazes us even more is there could be many more ships like this all over the Gulf of Mexico. Number 4. Apollo 11 engines. When space exploration was still in its infancy during the 1960s and 70s, scientists were mostly focused on the actual creation and launching of spaceships. No one cared particularly about the extra parts of spaceships after the launch. The only main concern was that the falling parts didn't hurt anyone. As long as human lives were saved, the scientists didn't really pay much attention to the jettisoned bits and pieces. But a couple of decades later, it all changed. It was actually Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com, who wanted to find the remains of one of the Apollos. But not just any old one. He actually wanted to retrieve the engines of Apollo 11, the spaceship that went down in history as the one that took us to the moon. Bezos assembled a team in 2012, and the team pulled it off. Surprisingly, the engines were in excellent condition. It turns out that when NASA makes something, it's made to last. Number 3. Underwater river in the Black Sea. As strange as it might sound, this really exists. And it really is a river. Well, sort of. If you could go down to the bottom of the Black Sea, you'd be able to see an actual river-like phenomenon, with water running in one direction just like an actual river. This natural phenomenon actually occurs due to the fact that the water in the river is much saltier than the surrounding water. Hence, it can go through the sea and make its own paths and lines, forming a sort of a river in the process. In the water, there is also a lot of sediment, and this also forms a thicker mass that can move along as an actual river. Although it isn't technically an object that's been found, it's definitely an important scientific discovery. And so far, many of these sea rivers have been found all over the globe. By examining them, scientists will be able to learn much more about the oceans and planet Earth. Who knows what else we may find? Number 2. SS Thistlegorn. This is the name of a British ship that was sunk on October 6, 1941, in the waters of the Red Sea. Once SS Thistlegorn was located, 2 bombs were dropped on it, and they both hit their target, unfortunately. Several crew members died or were injured, and the rest were picked up by another British ship. At the moment of the sinking, most of the ship's cargo was still on it, and it went down with the vessel. SS Thistlegorn was discovered in February 1956 by the famous explorer Jacques Cousteau. He had heard some interesting stories about the ship and used all the information he could gather from local residents, mostly fishermen. But an experienced explorer and adventurer, Cousteau embarked on an adventure to find the ship, and he managed to do it. He took several items from the ship as proof and a token: the ship's bell, the safe belonging to the captain, and even a motorcycle. If you want to learn more about it, you can read it in Cousteau's book, The Living Sea. Number 1. Antikythera Mechanism. If you think that computers are a modern-day invention, well, guess again, because you're wrong. How come? Well, computers, as we know them today, are indeed an invention dating back several decades. But the concept of a mechanical computing device was created much earlier. One such device is the now famous Antikythera Mechanism, which is basically an analog computer used in ancient Greece. It was used for calendars, to predict astronomical positions, and was also very important for setting the date of the ancient Olympic Games. So you get the picture. This was one of the first PCs around. The Antikythera Mechanism, named after the island by which it was found, came to be discovered in 1902. The guy who discovered it was named Valerius Stais, and the mechanism was dated to the 1st century BCE. So yeah, it's pretty old. But that's what makes it even more amazing, because we can imagine what people of the day were able to construct. Nowadays, this device is generally perceived as the world's first analog computer. Way to go, Greeks, the original geeks. Tell us what you think about these amazing finds in the comments below, and take care.